Well, they don't call it the Wild Wild West for nothing. The Western Conference in the NBA continues to shock and surprise and keep us entertained as the Denver Nuggets fire Michael Malone with just 3 games left in the regular season. What's up, everybody? This is Coast to Coast. I'm running game, riding solo today for a quick reaction to the major breaking news coming out of the NBA today. Remember, you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. You're on Apple Podcasts, you're on Spotify, make sure you leave that 5-star review. You do that, we'll keep producing that content. Let's just dive right in. This morning, Michael Malone was relieved of his duties as the Denver Nuggets head coach. After a disappointing run of 4 straight losses, after going 11-13 since the All-Star break, and yet somehow this is still a crazy, bonkers decision to make. It's still a stunning decision. I mean, you put it into context, you think, yeah, I guess it makes sense. We've kind of seen them struggling. They've been too reliant on Jokic. Jokic has kind of paved over some of the cracks within this team over the course of this year. And you look back and you watch the Pacers game again, and you look at the way that they defended, and you look at the lack of commitment from this team that we felt. But I also remember watching them play against the play against the Minnesota Timberwolves just last week in that double overtime game, and they were fully committed, and it was a great performance. And they, like, a mistake from Russ, or 2 mistakes from Russell Westbrook, ultimately cost them a win there. And you just don't know, like, the margins of this, like how quickly did it debilitate after that. Like it's all very strange, and that's why I don't put too much stock into that being like the looking back on that now that we know what's happened, now that we know the firing on that. I don't know how many people were spotting that in the moment and saying, oh, this team is giving up on Michael Malone. Oh, this team isn't playing for their coach anymore. There wasn't many that had that feeling. I don't think, certainly not me. But the Nuggets have made this decision, and they've made it while at least portraying that they still want to win the championship this year. Owner Josh Kroenke came out and basically said that this move was made now in order to put the team in the best position to win the championship this year, to have success this year. So that kind of tells you where the team was at, where the players on this team were at with Michael Malone. They had clearly completely fallen out with their coach. They were clearly unhappy playing with him. He clearly was not the guy that brought them the title in 2023 anymore. And that's just the ultimate case. The players have the power. The coach is always going to go before any of the players go. As much as it's being reported now that it was a shock to everyone, including the coach himself, it feels like this has been bubbling for a while. It feels like this has been coming. There's always been this power struggle between Calvin Booth and Michael Malone. They always kind of appear to be singing from a different hymn sheet, especially in the time since they won that title in 2023, where the GM wanted to save some money. He wanted to stop investing in veterans. He wanted to start having young guys come through, drafting lower, and getting these guys come through as part of the rotation. Michael Malone always really clearly had a different philosophy, where he wanted to be coaching veterans. He wanted to play other guys who were ready to compete now. He didn't want to be the guy who's going to develop these young players and put all his time into developing players. He wanted to be the guy who's playing with the guys who are already developed, who are ready to compete, ready to go now. That never works in a franchise. That's where the power struggle came. Everyone has to be singing. Has to be harmony. Everyone has to be singing from the same hymn sheet in order to have success in any sport, any team, any sport, any franchise. That's just the way that it has to be. Any business as a whole, that's just the way it is. Everyone needs to be singing from the same page. Everyone needs to be believing in the same principles. Everyone needs to be fighting for the same cause. And it just feels like that hasn't been the case in Denver since winning that title. They've been very much one foot in, one foot out. And Jokic has been able to pave over the cracks. Obviously, we would see this look a lot more dramatically bad and a lot worse if Jokic wasn't as insane as he is, especially this year. Obviously, he won MVP last year. They actually won more games last year than they did in their title winning team, but ultimately lost in 7 games to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the second round of the playoffs. Then this year, Jokic is putting up historic numbers, averaging basically like a 30-point triple double, shooting insane from three, from the field. He's just literally doing everything you could possibly want. And that's obviously, I guess, Denver see that as maybe paving over the cracks a little bit. And maybe that's made it harder for us to see the issues within this team, and mostly on the defensive side of the ball. They've never been an amazing defensive team, but the effort is not there as much, and they're really they're the bottom third now of the NBA for this season. They've never been that low, and that's what it ultimately comes down to. Because defense, I mean, we can say what we want. Defense is more about want and grit and willingness to work hard. That's what defense. That's those are the three core principles of defense. It's not like, oh, he's a great defender or he's a bad defender. You can make yourself a great defender by being willing to move your feet, by being willing to rush those extra yards, by willing to jump that little bit higher. Like there's lots of ways to make yourself a better defender. It's a lot easier to become a better defender compared to becoming a better offensive player. That's just, unfortunately, that's just the way it is, but you have to be willing to do it. And Denver guys over the last few weeks and months just felt like they weren't willing to do it anymore. And that's a bad sign. That's a sign that Michael Malone, that he lost that locker room in a really dramatic way. Didn't stop Jokic from producing insane numbers. Didn't stop Jamal Murray from regaining his form and looking back to his best. But ultimately, there was clearly tension there. Players clearly weren't happy. And Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, their power struggle ends with both of them being fired. That's the way it's gone. And in a way, it's kind of nice to see that no one came out on top. They were both, I guess, you could make the question that the ownership had it wrong when they hired Booth, but then you're kind of like, both Booth and Malone weren't really doing what the ownership wanted. They were both kind of not doing their jobs correctly, and they both ultimately paid the price for it. That's the way that it kind of feels. But I don't know if that's a fair way to describe it, but that's the way that it feels. It's just the timing of this is what is so scary. Like, this is tied for the latest firing of a coach ever in NBA history, and 3 games to go to the front of the playoffs. Yeah, maybe they were going to make this decision in the summer anyway, and weirdly, it's almost like more respect for them to just do it now and not string him along until the end of the season when they really don't have any interest in him continuing on with the team. But then you're also like, he's built up this credit. He won you your only title. He's your winningest coach ever. He's won you your most playoff games ever. And you're not going to give him one last chance, one last run at the playoffs. Like, to know it in that sense and just think, my God, how bad and how dark and dreary must it have been within the Nuggets locker room over the last few months for them to pull this decision now, to make this call at this moment now. That's where you're just like, wow, this is messed up. How bad has it been? How in the dark has everyone been over the state of the Denver Nuggets, and I guess ultimately how much has Nikola Jokic's greatness just paved over the cracks within this franchise and within this team over the last 6 to 8 months. We may never get the answers to that question, but that's what's on my mind. The more I kind of delve into this, the more I kind of react and deal with the decision that Denver has made. And I'm not, obviously, still surprised. The reason I'm not in complete state of shock right now is the more I think about it, is like the way that Michael Malone is. He is a hard-nosed coach. He's going to tell you how it is. He is an old-fashioned style coach. He's an aggressive coach with a short fuse. And when things are going well, that's great. And when your team believes in you because of that willingness to be honest and that willingness to be competitive and never give up and fight for your guys, then you see all the success. But the second that guys maybe fall out of favor, maybe guys kind of fall out of love with you, the second that maybe you start to lose some games, then that relationship can crumble very, very quickly. There's no there's no real wiggle room when you're that style of coach and that style of that. That's just your personality. There's not a lot of wiggle room, and it can quickly break down. I think that's what we've seen happen to Michael Malone, and it's not all on him. That's partly a fault of Calvin Booth and the Nuggets ownership as a whole, who clearly knew what Michael Malone was about, clearly knew what type of coach he was, his style, what he wanted to do, and they just failed to build around that. That they failed to put the right people in place to really bring out the best of him and allow him to bring out the best of this team. And that's a big problem. And I kind of compare it to the New York Knicks situation, where I think Tom Thibodeau was a somewhat similar coach to Michael Malone, whereas he is not really about developing young players. He wants veteran guys that know how to play his system, that are willing to work hard for him, and he's going to work hard for them. And the Knicks know that, and the Knicks believe in him as because they know he's one of the best coaches in the NBA. Yeah, people talk about how he's too reliant on guys and wears them down, but at the same time, he is still one of the brightest minds in the entire NBA, and the Knicks realize that, and they know they'd be in a worse position if they didn't have him. So they've done whatever they can as an ownership group and as a front office to put the best team out there for Tom Thibodeau to succeed. And the Knicks are seeing that come to fruition. They've been the most successful team they've had in the past 20 years, over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years under Tom Thibodeau. Maybe they won't achieve the ultimate greatness that Denver did by winning that chip, but they're in the right mold that you want any franchise to be, where it looks like everyone from the players to the coach to the GM to the ownership, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, and that's the breakdown that we saw in Denver. That was just completely shattered. It started after the title win, where they were willing to let Bruce Brown and Jeff Green go, and then last summer they were willing to let KCP go. They wanted to try and save some money. They didn't want to invest in these older veteran guys who had been key parts of the title winning team. They, in a way, wanted to have their cake and eat it too, in a weird sort of way. Like they wanted to keep the success going, but they didn't also want to be losing money. They didn't want to be paying too much in the luxury tax. They wanted to have guys on rookie contracts who were being part of this team around the great Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon trio. And unfortunately, that just isn't. It's not how it works. You have to invest in order to win. You look at all the teams that have had success over the past 10 years. They've paid huge amounts of money in luxury tax. They've been willing to make big trades. They've been able to convince major free agents to come sign with them. That's where you look at the Golden State Warriors, the Clippers, the Suns, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Cavaliers, the Lakers. Yeah, they haven't all had success, but they've been willing to make the moves to put themselves in the best position for success. Hasn't worked out for all of them. Hasn't worked out amazingly for some of them. But the biggest difference is they've all paid hundreds and hundreds of million in luxury tax, and the Nuggets aren't even close to that. They've built up through the draft, but yeah, as much as the draft is a huge part of any team's success, and arguably the best teams are built from the draft, you have to be able to make moves around the margins after you find your guys. Like they got their guys in the draft. They got Jokic, MPJ, Jamal Murray. They were all guys that they drafted. And then they started to build around them with the likes of KCP and Aaron Gordon. But then they were so willing to get rid of those guys so quickly and go back to the draft, where it wasn't about that. They didn't even give the team a year of the same core that won the title to go and try and do it again. They didn't even give them one more year of that. And that was, I hated that as soon as it happened. I called it out on this podcast when that happened, and I always had an issue with that. In the way the American sports franchises go, and the way like the way it's set out and set up, when you get your great guy, when you get that legend superstar all-timer like a Nikola Jokic that the Nuggets have got, you invest everything you possibly can into putting that guy in the best position to win championships, win MVPs, and win everything for as long as you can until he can't do it anymore. Then you start to rein it back in and look to save your money for a few years. But when you find your guy, that's what the best franchises do. That's what you want, and that's the best thing about any ownership group. When they find their guy and they're willing to do everything, anything, and everything to put that guy in the best position to win as much as he possibly can. That's what we see the likes of the Lakers do. That's what we see the likes of the Warriors that they've been doing with Steph Curry. The Celtics do it. That's just the way that they are, and those are the best franchises. Those are the guys that you want to believe in, and those are the guys. Those are the historic franchises that everyone knows, and ultimately they're the richest franchises as well. They're the ones who make the most money. That's just the way that it goes. And don't get me wrong, Denver is not the same hot commodity in terms of a free agent destination or anything like that. But they could still do better than they have. They still have the best player in the world. They could if they can't sell guys on coming to play for Denver, then they're not doing it right. They really don't know what they're at. But they gotta invest. I don't know if they can get back to it. It's tough to know if they can go through this rebuild. You kind of look at like the likes of Milwaukee, who had that title success and then made that big swing and got Damian Lillard in, and you're kind of like, okay, so they tried something new. It ultimately doesn't look like it's worked out, and it ultimately looks like they might have to blow it up and maybe lose Giannis this summer. If not this summer, probably the following summer. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But they've been willing to be aggressive. They've been willing to make moves to try and keep the championship window alive. Denver has kind of gone another way, and I'm not saying their championship window's closed or that Jokic is going to request a trade or anything crazy like that, but they owe it to themselves as a franchise, and they owe it to their fans to do whatever they can to put the best team around the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic to make this team a legit contender for the next 3, 4, 5 years. As long as Jokic wants to be there and is dominating, which I think could easily be for the next 3, 4, 5 years, if not even longer, they have to invest the money that it takes to win. Look at the other teams around them who are investing the money and achieving success. Yeah, you can't just blow it on anything like the Phoenix Suns have done. Moves have to make sense. You got to be willing to. You have to be smart with the moves you make. You can't just throw money at it and say, "Oh, that will work. It's fine." They got Jokic. It doesn't matter. They got to be smart about the moves that they make, but they got to be willing to be bold and make the moves. Like their only major trade really in the last like 5 years has been like the Aaron Gordon trade. Don't get me wrong, he's been huge for them. He only cost them one draft pick. No, they haven't really had to like make big moves where they give up a lot of young guys to bring in a star or bring in a great role player. Like they've been pretty calculated in a bad way, in my opinion, in building out this team. They got there. They found their mold where Jokic was the best player and Murray was that superstar and MPJ and Gordon were so great, and then they had the great role players around them. Then they were quickly willing to get off those role players. And now the rumors are still around MPJ that they might be willing to trade him. And I think he's such a key part of everything that they do offensively. And he's also a pretty good rebounder, even though he obviously is big. So you kind of have a little bit of questions around that. But I think he's such a key role player that so many title winning teams would be willing to, that would love to have on their team. But because of the contracts he's on, the rumors are always around that they're going to be willing to move off of him. But to get back what? Are they going to really get back guys that can really thrive around Jokic and really put this team into title contention? I'm just not so sure that that's going to be the case. And I don't want to say it's the beginning of the end for Denver, but this feels like it's been bubbling up since they won the title, like I said. And that's the only reason that it's not as maybe as stunning as the Taylor Jenkins firing, but the timing of it definitely makes it just as stunning because I mean 3 days before or with only 3 games left in the regular season, like why not just let it play out for until the postseason, give him one last run. I think he's earned that, and I think he would say the same. But the Nuggets obviously don't think so, and we'll have to just wait and see if that has a positive or negative effect. 3 games left. I believe they play the Kings, the Grizzlies, and the Rockets. That last game of the season, you imagine the Rockets would have the 2 seed tied down. Maybe they'll be resting guys. Maybe that's a game they'll be easily able to pick up. The Grizzlies is the big one. That could decide whether the Nuggets go into the play-in or they are in the playoffs legit. Right now, Nuggets are fourth, but if every team wins out between now and the end of the season in the Western Conference, between the 3 seed and the 8 seed, they will ultimately finish seventh and be in the play-in because of tiebreakers. And that's pretty pretty worrying, and that's pretty surprising, and that could be make a big difference on the future of the interim head coach and whether he's the guy that gets the job ultimately or not. Because at the playing, especially in the Western Conference, the playing is dangerous as hell. You don't know what could happen in a one-off game. Yeah, you'd favor Denver to come out of it, but then they have to go up against potentially an OKC Thunder in the first round, and that's definitely not what they want. So the wild, wild West, it just continues to deliver. The West is just so crazy, and every other day something insane seems to happen, whether it just be major changes in the standings, whether it be coaching firings, trades, everything goes down in the Western Conference. Nothing ever. It's like nothing ever happens in the Eastern Conference. It's always the West. The West is the thing to watch. The West is the way to go, and it's just chaotic. But that's why we love it, and that's why we cannot wait to get to the postseason and see where things go from here. But Denver, bold move now. Now is the time to show us: is this the beginning of the end, or is this the rebirth of another great title winning team? That's the question that they need to answer now. And they're in the greatest starting position they can be by having the best player in the world on their team. Now the next moves need to be made. They need to get the right GM in place, they need to get the right head coach in place, and see if they can pick up the players, rebuild the atmosphere to get this team back to being a top tier contender year after year, which is what they should be when Nikola Jokic is on your team. Those are just the simple facts. Denver, you're under pressure. You owe it to your fans. You owe it to yourselves as a franchise. You owe it to Nikola Jokic to get this team back on track, get this franchise back on track, because they should be legit contenders year after year after year. They've moved away from that over the last few years. That's really annoyed me. They've been 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I called them out on it, and Jokic has been able to pave over the tracks, but that's not happening anymore. Michael Malone is out. Jokic finally, I believe, probably had a say in that. He was probably unhappy with the way things are going. Maybe he wasn't too happy with how reliant the team were on him. Maybe that's played into this. I find it hard to believe that Jokic wouldn't know what's going on when it comes to that sort of direct basketball decision. When you're as good as he is, when you're that franchise star, I think he knows what's going on. I think his camp got word back to the ownership maybe that he didn't like the way things were going, and they've ultimately made the decision likely based off that. Maybe that will never come out. Maybe we'll never get the answer, but that wouldn't surprise me at all. If this was a LeBron James coach that got fired, everyone would be on about how LeBron was the guy who got him fired and blah, 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 blah. And that's because LeBron is that franchise guy, that he is that lead guy, and Jokic is that for Denver. So that's why I think he definitely, whether he had a hand in it or whether I definitely think he knew that it was coming. That's one thing I have absolutely no doubts about that. But Denver, you made the big swing. It's not all about it having an impact this year, but this has to be the start of something bigger and better. And we'll see how it goes. But that's going to do it for this impromptu reaction to some breaking news. The West, crazy as it is, with I guess almost off the court stuff, it's just as crazy on the court. Still going to be very intriguing to see how the seedings play out, and it's going to be crucial for certain teams. Like, when you look at the Warriors, you look at the Lakers, you think they're two teams that could really do with not having to go through the play-in tournament this year. They're teams that really want to just be in the playoffs, get that extra bit of time off that they haven't been able to enjoy over the last couple of years. And then you look at Denver, could they dramatically fall into the play-in? Can the Grizzlies get back up into the playoffs? Where the Timberwolves going to land? So much can still change over the last couple of weeks, and when it does, we'll have a cover for here on Coast to Coast. But for now, that's going to do it. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about the firing? Right decision? Wrong decision? Where do the Nuggets go from here? Is this the beginning of the end or the start of something new? You tell me. And most importantly, remember to take every shot and love every moment.